South Carolina returns back to Norman with some changes. So I had to get the team together so we can have a crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Today's crossover is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free picks on who's hitting a homer this MLB season. What's going on, Locked On fans? We've got Chris Marler from Locked On Gamecocks, Jay Smith, Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making us your first listen or view every single day. And shout out to all those everydayers out there for tuning in and subscribing to the show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We got a great episode for you today. We're going to jump into who to know from both the Sooners as well as the Gamecocks. We'll talk about the defenses versus the offenses on both sides. But to open this up, Chris, the most important thing to talk about is y'all made some changes. After last season, it wasn't the way that South Carolina Gamecocks fans wanted it. But then you went out, got a new offensive coordinator. He brought his O-line coach. Talk to us. What's the feeling there with the fans on how South Carolina looks going into next season?
No, we're back. We're back, baby. No, it's funny because the offseason's been funny listening to the outside noise versus South Carolina, like what you hear in like the four walls and inside Columbia or whatever else. And like one of the conversations that keeps getting had is like, well, yeah, of course they got all this like juice coming out of media days and everyone thinks they're going to be good. And but we've all heard that before. This happens every year. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It happened last year. They've been ranked in the preseason poll one time in the last 12 years. Now, granted, that was last year and they went 4-8. I think, you know, with a season that goes that well, Jay, they didn't really need to make a lot of changes. But I'm glad they did. Though it was awful. It was awful. And I think there's a specific thing that I'll bring up in this show that happened in the Oklahoma game that was the perfect example of why you needed a change at the offensive coordinator position. And Shane Beamer has been, I don't want to say loyal to a fault, because I don't think that's necessarily it. You've had a bunch of different offensive coordinators. Yeah. But he's also been a guy that like he does like to keep that core nucleus and like the continuity thing together, and he's done a really good job of that on the defensive side of the ball. The thing on the offensive side of the ball is you were abysmal offensively with Mike Shula, and the offensive line has given up 40 sacks or more in each of the last 3 seasons. And then the running backs position, I think you know there were so many things that needed to be improved. Like, you didn't sign a high school back in like each of the last 2 classes. It's like, yeah. And so
they fell on living in the portal. Like, why would you do that?
And the portal they were living in was like Rasul Faison, who was a 7th-year senior from Utah State. Like, there's guys on this team at all the positions that are really talented. Yeah. They have been, I think, offensively, I'll say at least, they have been really done a disservice because of the staff that was here previously. Now, I think that's going to change this year. I think they'll be much better. But there's a lot of the same faces that have been there before. There's also a lot of new faces, like you said.
Yeah, that's the one thing I noticed about the team and the changes with especially with the coaching staff. Like you said, you had to bring in a new offensive coordinator. Kendall Browse comes in and brings his offensive line coach, which I think is a big deal for South Carolina. Mm-hmm. I think that can change the trajectory of the offense. LaNorris Sellers kind of needs some stability and needs some competence. And I think you can bring that with Kendall Browse. And like even for like Oklahoma, one of the big things for us is we changed our tight end coach. We got Jason Witten, former NFL tight end. I was skeptical going into it because former NFL player, former NFL great. They don't always do that good because not all of them are really dedicated to the grind and the hustle. Right. But I'll give it to Witten because he was a high school coach for like 4 or 5 years. He had success there, and you don't go be a high school coach if you think that you're gonna like get like rich. Like you maybe can use that as a platform to move up, but the grind in that is a real grind, and you got to actually care because them kids are knuckleheads. Yeah. And that's the way I'll give to him. And then running back coach with DeMarco Murray leaving to go to the Chiefs, you go get Dylan McCullough, former coach at Notre Dame, was at the Raiders. And we're seeing a level of cohesion that is very interesting how they kind of, quote unquote, got the band back together. And for the uninitiated, Kevin Wilson was the former offensive coordinator at Oklahoma in the early 2000s. Jason White, Sam Bradford are your 2 Heisman Trophy winners he coached. He left, went to Indiana to take the head coaching job there. No, he did not do a Signetti job. They were not all that great, but they had moments. Well, Dylan McCullough was his running back coach there for 7 years. And now he ties back into Oklahoma because Kevin Wilson is an analyst at Oklahoma,
Right.
and Dylan McCullough comes in as a running back coach. So yeah, that's a pretty big pickup for the Sooners to go into the year. But from there, defensively, did y'all make any changes on defense? Because that's what I was curious about.
So one change, and I think it's the only loss they've had of the offseason. Like you could sit here and say anything you want, and you could tell how defensive I have to already be about South Carolina.
Fair.
I think you can make any argument you want to make about how bad last season was, but when they got to the end of the season, there was something put in front of Beamer, and it was like, listen, this is what the expectations are. You're not going to be fired this year, but these are the things that you're going to need to go win. And the first thing he had to do was retain the key players, LaNorris Sellers, Dylan Stewart. And listen, Dylan Stewart, I can tell you firsthand, South Carolina's kind of been ahead of the curve on the retention side of this. Like 2 years ago, they started working with retaining Sellers for 2025 in September of 2024, right? Like during that season, they were like, hey, we got to, and then same with Dylan Stewart. So that was the first thing. You got to get those guys. And then if you get Nick Harbor, it's like, it's kind of a bonus, but like, I don't think it would have been program changing if he had gone. I think it's huge that he came back, but he gets all three. And then you got to go figure out who you're going to get as offensive coordinator. I kind of makes a home run higher, I feel like, with Kendall Briles and how much better his type of offense will be with the type of players he has, and LaNorris especially, in comparison to what Shula had. Like you and I would have been better blind than Mike Shula was last year. But getting a guy like Briles would be even better. Like all 8 of our eyes are better than however many Mike Shula has. He's terrible. So then you have the only thing they lost was you lost Sterling Lucas, my favorite law firm that went to LSU. And a lot of people thought he was going to take Dylan Stewart with him, which he didn't. So you get Deion Barnes as the new edge rush coach from Penn State, very good up-and-coming coach there. The thing that no one seems to be talking about that I think might be one of the secret sauce type things for this year is Travian Robertson had a bunch of health issues last year, right before the season started, and it was really sad. He was hospitalized, and he was basically out for most of the year. Well, he's back, and that was a strength, that 2024 defense. Ooh. I always say this: you can be bad or you can be injured. You cannot be both. And in the trenches last year, South Carolina was both. And on the defensive side, they were very, very thin in the interior defensive line. But now you have depth there, and you have Travian Robertson back, and then you get Clayton White as the defensive coordinator, who's been one of the best defensive coordinators in the conference year in and year out. And then, oh, by the way, you have a Torian Gray in the secondary who's put 8 kids in the league in the last 6 years. And so that kind of stuff is not talked about on a national level because it's South Carolina, but it's really, really positive.
No, I agree with you. I mean, J.C. Horn is one of my favorite corners in the NFL. And I'm like, the staff is putting out players that are going to the league. And, of course, South Carolina always pulls random 5-star players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that actually go out there and dominate. Dylan Stewart's a very great example of that. So some changes, a lot more on offense than defense.
Thank God.
And that's something that we really need to jump into. So let's talk about the offensive side of the ball for South Carolina go against this Oklahoma defense on this crossover edition of Locked On Gamecocks and Locked On Sooners. Today's crossover edition is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with Daily Dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your first pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games. Whether you're following your favorite team or keeping up on high matchups across the league, every game has someone capable of going deep, guaranteed. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before the pitch. I like going in here. I'll go check out, especially a Yankees game, because of the way the stadium is set up. It's always a good opportunity for someone to hit a home run. So I'm always checking them out to see who's available. Maybe you can catch the Dodgers there and get some Shohei Ohtani action. They're always good because certain players at every at-bat, it feels like they're about to hit a big one, and it could happen. So you got to take advantage of that. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. And once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners and Locked On Gamecocks your first listen every single day. Shout out to all our everydayers out there for tuning in and subscribing to the shows. Chris, your offense will look much different this year in not a traditional way. LaNorris Sellers is still there, but you've got a new offensive coordinator, new O-line coach. Who the heck's going to run the rock? That's what I'm curious about, because that feels like the one spot where I don't know if I have enough clarity to say, oh, yeah, this is going to be that dude.
Yeah, they've got like 6 guys that clearly they're not all going to play. But I do love the fact that you said who's going to run the rock, because I think that's a key part of Kendall Briles' offense. You don't see a kid that's like it's not like it would be a detriment if you're able to catch the ball out of the backfield. But you're not seeing anyone in his offenses over the last 6 years at TCU and Arkansas that's a high part and a priority of his offense. I think the most you've had in any season for a running back with receptions in that offense is like 22. So it's going to be very straightforward. You're running the football. Yeah. Matthew Fuller, who's the first example I'll give you of how dumb the offense was last year, rips off a 72-yard touchdown run against LSU to go up 7-3 in Death Valley. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, well, they got something going here. And he didn't touch the ball the rest of the first half. So that is a person who is going to, you also, I'll get the other one out of the way right now too. You might be familiar with his game, Jay, because when South Carolina got the ball inside the red zone, which rarely happened last year, they were the 3rd worst team in the entire Power 4 at getting the ball into the red zone. When they did that against Oklahoma, they were like, you know what? We're going to prove a point. We're going to run it right down their throats. And you know what no one did on Oklahoma's defense last year was run the ball
down their throats.
And so it was one of the dumbest 4-play sequences I've ever seen. And that, again, that will change this year. But you have him, you have Christian Clark, who was the Texas running back that I think was MVP of like the Cheez-It Bowl. And then you have a kid that was a 4-star recruit, went to Colorado's named Isaiah Augustave. I think I'm saying his last name wrong, but
Augustave. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Fancy. Those will be the guys that are there running the football. And I think the other big one that you will finally see this year is LaNorris Sellers, because last year it was just not a part of his game or of part of the offense. And I don't know if that's because you were worried about losing him or him getting injured. But it just was never something that they put into the actual system, and to the point where it got so frustrating to watch, because he averaged under 2 yards per carry on the season, which is, I know that sack yards count and all that kind of stuff, but the worst stat I've ever heard, against LSU, he had 22 carries for 19 yards. And in that game, he ran on the field, which is a real metric Cole Kubick tweeted out, for 891 yards on the night. He got 19 yards. It was so that's like
he was just everywhere.
That's running for his life. That's the offense we're talking about from last year.
Oh gosh! But the good thing is that's going to change now. I've got to ask this though: offensive line is where the biggest question mark for you all came. 2 tackles go down with injuries. If I'm correct, Peak should be back game 1 possibly, but the other tackle might not come back until mid-season. How does the line look? Because it's all transfers for the most part, it looks like.
Yeah. Well, I got myself in trouble last year saying this, so hopefully it won't happen again. But I said last year, it's like, it can't get any worse. And it did. And that whole comment I made about you can be bad or you can be injured, you can't be both. That is a perfect example of the offensive line. You can be bad or injured, but they were both last year. So this year you get Peak. He will be back for game 1. He's progressing fine. You really don't need him until the Mississippi State game, but he will be out there. Maybe you see him on a pitch count. I don't know. I don't think they've gone over that necessarily. Josiah Thompson is out for the year. They knew that going into the offseason, and that part's fine. He's a former highly ranked recruit. Never really that hasn't really shown yet on the field. He's started 2 years at left tackle, but. Then you have Shed Surratt, who's the only returning starter who will play right tackle, who I thought was really good last year at times and should progress in here. And then you just brought in a bunch of dudes with a ton of experience. It's almost like the Indiana type mentality. Where they brought a bunch of 23-year-old, fifth-year seniors in. Emmanuel Poku, a kid from East Carolina, who's going to be very, very good. Carter Miller at center. And several other pieces I think that'll be good. And then the interesting part will be Darius Gray, who's a fringe five-star offensive lineman that is very, very athletic, very versatile on the offensive line. And the coaching staff has already said before fall camp started that they are going to find whatever path is quickest to him getting on the field. That will be the path for them.
Yeah, when you bring in some high 4 fringe 5-star guys, you got to find a way to get them on the field, especially if they're as talented as they're advertised when you get them on campus. I guess the bigger question for you all, what the bigger surprise to me is that Briles and his O-line coach didn't bring anybody with them. I figured they would bring some players from TCU with them, and they typically do.
I don't think it would have moved the needle for me necessarily. I will tell you, I think Briles bringing him is much bigger than people have talked about.
It's a massive deal.
It's just a little, agreed. And it's like, now, and I'm not trying to have a spoiler alert here. I don't think that means they're going to push around Oklahoma or Georgia's defensive line. But I will tell you that I think, again, this is all about being better than last year and winning a bunch of other games on this schedule, and which I think they will do. But bringing Clements over, he's not a guy that's I don't think he's getting a ton of love from the NFL scouts. And I know they got roasted for some spring ball video because Landon Tingwall or whatever it is posted this is why offensive line play is so bad. It's like a 13-second clip from a drill that they're doing in February or something. But he is also, that's just another level of continuity that you needed. And again, you've given up over 40 sacks in 3 years. You did it with people like Spencer Rattler, who's not very fast, and then you did it with LaNorris Sellers, and it's that has to improve, and I don't think it can get worse.
Yeah, when you have an offensive line coach that comes with his offensive coordinator, they usually work in tandem anyway, too. Right. So that actually kind of helps with going forward. So, excuse me. Shout out to them on that. And, of course, for the South Carolina fans, Oklahoma's defense, we're bringing back everybody we have on our defense in the starting lineup right now are returning players from Brent Venables the last 2 to 3 years. Yeah. We should be as good this year as we were last year, if not a little bit better, because
Thomas is gone, right?
He is gone. He won't be terrorizing you, but Taylor Wine, the one that got the interception and the sack, he is back. Yeah. So that's the one that we're the most excited about. But I think if anything, the matchup between our secondary and Nick Harbor and Nitro, that's what's going to intrigue me. And Sellers just being a ginormous human being, it's it's hard to bring him down in general, but it's going to be fascinating to see if our line can continue to get to him, or if Kendall Briles dials it up to where he can get rid of the ball fast enough and not deal with as much pressure, as long as y'all's offensive line, of course, is healthy. That's where the big question comes in.
Yeah, and I think this is, out of all the games and matchups in the season it's August 6th that we're recording this, right? So it's
of course.
Of all the matchups that looking in the season, I have been very adamant. I think there's 2 games on this schedule that South Carolina can't win. And I'm not going to tell you which ones they are, but I'm glad that we're doing the show together. So it's but I think part of that's because the matchup is so frustratingly one-sided in terms of, listen, David Stone is a monster, right? Oklahoma is one of the best. And I did my worst this offseason, giving them bulletin board material saying that Texas had a better defensive line like an idiot. And so it's I think that, and who was the guy that, was it Nagy that reposted it?
Yes, it was Nagy. He's the one that saw it, put it as a bulletin board, and he has pinned it up. People know you, Marler. You are very much infamous in the world. Heck, Shane Beamer call you out. So showing you love
is actually in the locker room. That's we got problems. No, but I do think that it's a bad matchup for South Carolina offensive line versus defensive line. But I think also anyone's offensive line against this Oklahoma defensive line is a bad matchup, outside of maybe Texas and Georgia, where it's a little bit more even. And again, I do think this offensive line is going to take a big step forward, but it is I think that still last year was such a one-sided, miserable game to watch. And that's really when Oklahoma was pretty struggling offensively.
We were beat up.
Yeah, they were beat up. They couldn't run the ball on anybody at that point, and they ripped off 100. I think they had a 100-yard rusher. They had 150 yards overall. So it just was a very frustrating season. I think this game, especially being in Norman, I know what happened last time South Carolina went there, but it's an uphill battle for sure. There are some really, really good matchups in terms of Oklahoma's receivers, which people continue to sleep on because they came into the league and I keep comparing it to like when Missouri came into the league. And I'm not comparing you guys to Missouri, so don't worry. But when Missouri came in the league in 2012, people forget this. They lost their top 6 offensive linemen in the fall. They were driving around on campus in golf carts, like looking for bodies like mine to see if they could fit into the offensive line.
That's so bad.
Opportunity, brother. And so like that, but then you go into the SEC and it's like, this whole bravado SEC, beat your chest, like, weren't man enough. And when Oklahoma came in, they lost like their top 6 receivers. And it's become this whole thing of like, well, the offense is supposed to be what carried Oklahoma forever. And it's like, Venables' defensive coach. Like, it's just a very misguided characterization and generalization of Oklahoma as a team because of all those injuries. This year with Isaiah Satanga back, the defensive backs for South Carolina and really vice versa, but especially Oklahoma's receivers and South Carolina's defensive backs, that's going to be an awesome matchup.
Speaking of that, let's jump right into the offense versus the defense here on this crossover edition. Locked on Gamecocks, Locked on Sooners. And once again, thank you for making Locked on Gamecocks and Locked on Sooners your first listen every single day. Chris, you kind of led us right into it, which is perfect. We're right at the part where we need to talk about offenses and defenses. And so for South Carolina, this is the thing I noticed about you all. Y'all bring back a lot. Basically, the entire defense from last year, with like one exception possibly at nickel coming in as a transfer. That's impressive. That's one of the biggest challenges for any team is to have that level of continuity. And you've got that on the side of the ball where you guys are really good.
Yeah, what's interesting is I keep bringing this up, and people are probably tired of hearing me say it, but like the 2024 defense South Carolina had was obviously the strength of that team. And there's no Nicky Minwari on this defense, right? I wish there was.
Yeah.
But like there's the way that this defense is constructed and like the roster itself, especially on that side of the ball, it's so similar to 2024 because it's like, what were the strengths then? Well, you had this really good, edge rusher playing on one side of the defensive line that ended up being the SEC Player of the Year in Kyle Kennard. And then on the other side, bookending the defensive line, you had this freshman. Dylan Stewart, who's like, oh, that's great. He ended up being great, partially because of how much attention Kennard got, and they fed off each other. And then in the interior defensive line, you had 2 guys that registered 4+ sacks, which is very difficult to do at that position. And you had a lot of depth there. You had all of the returning production at the linebackers behind you with 3 guys that played almost like 90% of the snaps. And then you had a secondary that I think they returned 3 or 4 starters from the year before. They were very, very good. And what this defense has done better than anything, this is not an Oklahoma or Georgia defense where it's like, man, that's a brick wall you're trying to run through and it's very difficult to move the ball. It's more so like I don't want to say bend but don't break because it's not that, but they are really good at turning you over. And forcing turnovers. They forced more turnovers than anyone else in the SEC in the last 5 years with 110. That has been a staple that's happened every single year. Well, this year, you got Dylan Stewart on one end, where you could say the Kennard thing, and then you got Julian Walker, who's a freshman 5-star that's coming in on the other side, or maybe Caleb Herring from Tennessee. You got a ton of depth in the interior defensive line. Gabriel Brown-Lodindi, who's also a 4-5-star. You've actually got, this is not going to impress you guys because it's Oklahoma. But you've only had 11 5-stars ever signed in this program, and 5 of them are on this year's roster. Yep. And so and that doesn't include Gabriel Brown-Lodindi, who's like, don't laugh, okay? We're doing our best down here. But you get Gabriel Brown-Lodindi, who's like a former 5-star that went to A&M. And then
he's an Oklahoma legacy. We know who he is.
I didn't know that. There you go.
Yeah, we tried to get he was committed to Oklahoma, and then when Lincoln Riley left, he flipped to Texas A&M.
Okay, and I think I think he's good. I'm not like
good enough.
I'm discounting him, and I'm not saying this to be, just to stroke your ego. I don't think anyone is David Stone.
Fair.
He is very good though, and I think he's gonna. Again, this is talking about the grown man football thing. You got him and this Niwa Diarjaye from Illinois. They're both again 5th-year seniors, and they're going into like they're grown ass men on the defensive line. You return everyone in the linebacker position, and you got a secondary that's got some really good safeties and some young talent. The defense is going to be very, very good. And it's going to be much more similar to, I think, to 2024, where at times last year, this team got ran through. And that was really, it happened against Oklahoma. And it was frustrating to watch because you were so thin on the defensive line. I don't think that's going to happen this year.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be the biggest thing that's going to help you guys actually try to take the next step forward or at least get back to what you were in 2024 is that the fact your defense is going to be so strong. That was the one thing I noticed the most was like there's a bunch of age on that defensive line and a lot of you got some good transfers to be able to rotate, and that's going to be the challenge for Oklahoma. Like John Mateer's coming into this game, he should not, knock on wood, have more screws in his thumb, and she maybe actually grip a football for a change, because that was like 3 games after the 2 games after the Texas one, and he's still running around with blood on his thumb. He should be more healthy, and so this should be a good challenge for him. Luckily, it's at home, so that always helps out. But at the same time, our offensive line is going into this as we got confidence in that game against you all. But like you said, you were super thin, and that's very common. But for us, it's second year for some 5-star guys, high 4-star guys that feel comfortable and now have some of that cohesion and chemistry. Eddie Pierre-Louis at the guard spot. He was at media days. Yeah. Rivals had him as the number 1 interior guy in his class, and he's starting to play like it now. He's starting to play like a force, and he's mean. He likes to run right through somebody's face and, get a penalty every once in a while. Fasusi at left tackle, true freshman.
That kid.
Dude, he's insane. He walked in against Michigan, and everybody's like, wait, who's this dude? I didn't think he was going to play this year.
At the end of the year. Like, at the end of the year, he's like one of the best offensive linemen, I thought, in the SEC.
Exactly, and that was because he had an ankle injury at the Michigan game, and so he was playing on a little bit of a sore ankle. And like I said, later in the season, you're like, oh, wait, he could end up being one of the top dudes in the country by the end of his career. Shoot, mid-season this year, he could end up one of the top offensive tackles, especially going into 27. And then, of course, Ryan Fogier, who's one of the other tackle. He was another top 10 tackle that we picked up to go with Fasusi in the same class. He was playing some guard and tackle. He's going back and forth. They may try to pop him out there at tackle because he plays a lot better out there. He's not Fasusi, but he's very close, especially the way that he's developed. He's lost a little weight. He doesn't have that baby fat on him. We feel good. But I think for us, like you said, run game, we were actually okay, about 150 yards, kind of stinky. But at the same time, we had a 100-yard rusher.
Yeah.
We've got 5 backs finally that can actually play with the help of Torrey Blaylock, who had the 100 yards versus you guys. He's back. Xavier Robinson's back, who had 100 against Tennessee. We got a couple freshmen that'll be fun to be able to play. We should be better there, but I think the biggest improvement Oklahoma saw was tight end.
Right.
Like, that's what I'm really intrigued to see with your linebackers, all the veterans you have there, and now getting Hayden Hansen from Florida, and then adding in Rocky Beers from Colorado State just as a fun piece, and then Jack Van Dorselaer from Tennessee. We've got tight ends, dude. Like, something that I haven't seen in the Brent Venables era for the most part, which kind of feel bad to say, but at the same time, it's kind of true.
Yeah, well, I think, and again, that's in my opinion, I think you've got several linebackers at South Carolina that are actually going to be very good in coverage. J.R. Johnson, Fred J.R. Johnson is the main one. He's built like a true SEC linebacker. He's 6'3", 240. I mean, he can run. Justin Okoronkwo is a kid that I love. He was a kid that was recruited in the part of Saban's last class at Alabama. 6'3", 230. He's a 3-star recruit out of high school, but he's from Germany. And I remember covering Alabama at the time, and people around the program were saying, like, if this kid is born in the States, like we believe he would be like a 5-star recruit. Like he can run sideline to sideline. He's going into year 2 as a starter. So is Fred J.R. Johnson as well. They're both, I think, juniors or true juniors. Maybe Okoronkwo is a 4th year actually. So I think
he's a 4th year. Yeah.
Okay, I think in coverage they'll be pretty good. Now here's the other part of it too. You think about 2 years ago, they had Demetrius Knight Jr., who ended up being a top 50 pick. I don't know if either of those guys is like that level, but I do think they will be better in coverage this year, especially. And the big thing, too, is the defense that Clayton White is going to run is that flex nickel where it's like a 3-3-5 or a 4-2-5. But it's almost, I think they will be in 4-2-5 for like 80% of their defensive snaps this year. I think that's because that's where the strength of your personnel is, I think, going into this year, too.
Oh no, that makes sense, especially if you're leaning on the strengths that you need to, especially because your defense should be what you all lead on the most this year, especially because of the experience. Like, with so much change on offense, I think by mid to late season, probably closer to the time that we play each other, I think the confidence, or at least the understanding of what the offense is going to be, should be established. Like, I still feel like for you all, the running game is the thing I have the biggest question on. That's the thing that's going to help LaNorris Sellers the most. For Oklahoma, that was the question coming into the season. Will our two backs be healthy? Now we got 5 that are willing to play. Jonathan Haddon was a top 10 running back in the country. We got him to flip from Texas A&M after he flipped from Oklahoma the first time, whatevs. But he may find a way on the field too. It feels good when you know you have players that are ready to play. And I guess this 5 for 5 kind of changes it in even more, because people now, they don't have to sit to get their red shirt. They can just continue to play regardless and try to get their stock up for the next transfer. But I think Oklahoma now is in a situation where the run game should be able to actually be competitive. The tight ends will be able to block real well. The offensive line has some cohesion and chemistry because they're the same dudes from last year. You're bringing back 5 players with a minimum of 5 starts last season, which is insane to even think about. And then you add an Amarian Harris, who has put on bulk and looks bigger, much bigger than he was at Arkansas, so he should be able to play better, and he's moving a lot better in comparison. But this is going to be a fun matchup, and I cannot wait for you all to come to Norman. So don't worry, everybody. Me and Chris, probably John, we're going to get back together. We're going to have another crossover right before the week, because at that point, we'll actually know what each team is. And so thank you all for joining us here on this crossover edition of Locked On Gamecocks and Locked On Sooners. Make sure you like, subscribe, and find us wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to, as well as on YouTube. And hit the bell notification so you'll miss a single episode whenever we drop. And make sure you go follow Chris Marler. He's one of the best on Twitter. He's hilarious. X-Bird, whatever y'all want to call it. Yeah. He's hilarious. And Shane Beamer shouted him out. So go find that, because it's hilarious that he did that. And you can follow us, of course, over at Locked On Sooners. And Chris, thank you once again, and we will see you all. What's that? In a couple of weeks, because football is here. Fall camp is here. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.